Hi, and welcome to another episode of Health Naturally. My name is Paul Gerst. I'm a licensed acupuncturist and the owner of New England Natural Health Services. Tonight, I have with me the owners and practitioners at Long Pond Physical Therapy, Andrew Burke and Brian Faghan. Welcome.
Hey, Paul. How you
Thanks,
doing?
Paul.
And appreciate you guys being here. And if you wouldn't mind, tell listeners, tell the viewers a little bit about yourselves and how you got into the field and how you guys came together as business partners.
Well, for me personally, I mean, I had a story like every other person in therapy that they've had some experience with therapy in the past. They either went through it or knew someone that went through it. And that was my case. My mother went through it, and it made a world of difference to her for a while. And when that happened, I decided that's what I wanted to go into. You know, I finally got into the field, started working in the same clinic that Andy did, and that's how we met.
How old were you when you made the decision?
I was probably in my mid-20s at the time, mid to late 20s, when I decided that I was going to go from exercise physiology into physical therapy.
And Andrew, how about you?
I graduated from BU in 2001 with a PT degree and started working at Meyer Physical Therapy with Brian in 2001, pretty much right out of school. And we both worked there for a couple of years, and the previous owner wanted to get out, so she sold the business to us, and we've owned it now for about 10 years, and we changed the name to Long Pond Physical Therapy.
Okay. 10-year anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Well, we're here to talk about shoulder problems, and so let's jump right into it. What is the most common shoulder problem?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I mean, you get rotator cuff tendonitis and frozen shoulder.
Yeah, arthritis, just different tendinitises. I mean, most of the stuff that we see with the shoulder really has something to deal with the rotator cuff itself.
Okay. So are there some people that are more prone to shoulder problems than others?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people more prone to shoulder problems. I mean, if you look at how we, carry on our everyday business, most of us are in front of the computer all day long or sitting in a desk chair all day long, and we start to develop forward posture, and as that posture starts to pull forward, you start to develop impingements. We also deal with a lot of people that work with their arms for a living, so people like mechanics, electricians, plumbers, people that use their hands oftentimes up overhead will be a little bit more prone to different tendinitises because of the impingement that takes place when they're using their arms repeatedly over time.
Repetitive use injury?
Yeah, so repetitive use injury is just a huge part of rotator cuff stuff.
Okay, and so in essence, what we're talking about is, with a repetitive use, it as the name suggests, it's doing something over and over and over again and just wearing down, like you might, if you hung on a door, the hinge of a door might wear down if you hung on the door, kind of deal. What other types of injuries might you see? Inflammation kind of thing? Is there anything that you can show people with the model here as far as the anatomy of the shoulder and how that might look and with some of the different injuries?
Yeah, so Brian mentioned impingement, and pretty much anytime you have that forward shoulder posture or you're raising your arm up and overhead, the space in between these two bones here, the head of the humerus and the end of the shoulder blade and clavicle come together, and the end of the shoulder blade there called the acromion. This space lessens with that forward shoulder posture and when you're doing overhead activities. So that in essence causes what you call impingement.
So it would be like a frozen shoulder would be one of those? Is that?
Impingement can lead to frozen shoulder.
Okay.
So those rotator cuff tendons basically run right around and through this area, so that these bones being too close together can cause them to become pinched. Then the tendons swell up. You get less space inside that joint because of the swelling, so it makes those tendons more and more likely to become pinched over and over again.
So impingement, there would be limited range of motion. It's on the way, as you say, to frozen shoulder if it's not corrected. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So the shoulder impingement that causes tendonitis, can that eventually lead to a rotator cuff tear?
Pretty much, yeah. If it's not taken care of, that impingement in this bone here sometimes can be a little overgrown. You can develop a bone spur, and that can basically act as a little saw and start nicking away at that tendon. So it's not only inflamed at this point, but you start to get fraying of those tendon fibers, and then can become a full-fledged rotator cuff tear, which would need, possible surgical intervention.
Now, can you, with the rotator cuff, is show people the rotator cuff on there? I'm just curious. I mean, it's not one spot. It's a grouping.
It's a group of muscles. Yeah, it's a small group of muscles, but it's very important. It's actually not shown on here. These are the ligaments that are basically forming the shoulder capsule that provides stability to the joint. But the rotator cuff muscles start back here on the shoulder blade and then kind of wrap around the front of the shoulder and anchor into the bone there. So
it allows, rotate. Is it literal rotation of the arm, right?
Yeah, external
so it doesn't
rotation.
Fall out of the socket, kind of thing.
Yeah, it provides stability to the joint. Yeah.
Okay. Now, with a rotator cuff tear, does that always demand surgery, or what? How is that handled?
No, not always. Small tears can be kind of healed on their own with, time and doing the right things in terms of exercise and rest, ice.
So basically, an orthopedic surgeon is making that call, or what's the?
Well, ultimately, if it was a surgical case, the orthopedic would make that final call. We'll often get patients in with those minor tears in hopes that they don't need surgery.
Okay.
So like Andy was mentioning, we're going to try to develop a program that treats the imbalances that got them there in the first place. So if that joint space is closing down, we want to make sure that we try to do things to promote the opening of that joint. And a lot of that would be scapular stabilization exercises, as well as just improving the range of motion of the joint itself, the flexibility of the muscles around that joint, and increasing the strength and stability of the rotator cuff itself.
So having said that, how long is an average case like that? How long does it take to get better?
Well, I mean, a small tear, if it's a small enough tear, oftentimes we can improve that person's condition in probably 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
If there is a substantial tear in there and it does require surgery, that is a much longer process. It's a much more painful process. Something like that could take anywhere, 3 to 4 months before they're feeling normal with their activities of daily living to, a full year to realize full recovery and to gain, full strength back.
Okay, well, so you guys have 2 locations, is that correct?
Yes, we do, yeah.
In Plymouth, which is where I practice, so I work with these guys. And the other location being?
Pembroke.
Pembroke, so right on 139 in Pembroke.
Okay, and Pembroke, when did you guys start that office?
Pembroke we opened up, it'll be 2 years ago this November coming up.
Okay, and so for people that are wanting to learn more about you guys, and if they're looking for PT in either the Plymouth area or the Pembroke area, can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you?
Sure. I mean, they can just do a Google search for Long Pond Physical Therapy. They'll find that our website is longpondpt.com. They could also give me a call if they want directly. I'd be glad to talk to anyone that has a question. That number at Plymouth is 508-746-6922. If there's someone in the Pembroke office that would like to talk to our staff up there, Tim is an excellent therapist up there. They can call 781-924-5289.
Okay. Well, we did some shooting before in your office in Plymouth, and just to let everybody know, you guys were demonstrating some exercises and some of the therapy that you do there. So why don't we go take a look at the office in Plymouth and some of the information that you guys imparted on me then?
Yeah, sure.